Attorney General Jeff Sessions is slowly but surely taking a wrecking ball to some of the few areas where President Obama's attorneys general made progress. And recently he announced that he is choosing to unilaterally undo progress we've made with respect to one of the most brazenly tyrannical policies in existence: civil asset forfeiture. So according to Robert Everett Johnson of Politico, he reports that every day law enforcement officials across the United States seize cash from motorists stopped at the side of the road. It's called civil forfeiture, and the stories of abuse are legion. Over $17,000 seized from the owner of a barbecue restaurant in Staunton, Virginia. Over $13,000 seized from a former church deacon in DeKalb County, Georgia. Over $50,000 seized from a Christian rock band in Muskogee County, Oklahoma. Civil forfeiture allows government to seize property based on the mere suspicion that it is connected to a crime. For instance, the fact that the cops think someone has too much cash is enough to warrant a seizure. After the property is seized, in a complete reversal of the way the American justice system is supposed to work, owners must prove their own innocence to get it back. Public outrage over the practice has grown as more tales of abuse have been reported. And fortunately, over the past 3 years, 24 states have passed reforms to protect property owners and curtail civil forfeiture. Less fortunately, on Wednesday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a new federal policy that threatens to undermine those reforms. Speaking in a small conference room surrounded by law enforcement officials, Sessions announced the federal government was rolling back an Eric Holder-era policy that had sharply curtailed so-called adoptive seizures. An adoptive seizure occurs when a state police officer seizes property and then transfers it to the federal government, which then forfeits the property under federal law. Importantly, state law enforcement gets to keep up to 80% of the proceeds of the forfeiture. To understand why that matters, imagine you are a motorist whose cash is seized in a state with strong protections for property owners. Under state law, state police can take your property only if they convict you of a crime, but using an adoptive seizure, state police can take your property without convicting you of anything and can rely on federal prosecutors to forfeit the money and pay a kickback of 80% to the local police department. Those state law protections no longer protect you from anything. In other words, by reauthorizing adoptive seizures, the Attorney General's policy will allow state police to circumvent protections for property rights put in place by state legislatures. Worse, because proceeds from the sale go to state law enforcement, the federal government actually pays state police to circumvent their own law. It's practically an open invitation to corruption and abuse. Wednesday's directive is particularly jarring, coming from an attorney general who has previously embraced federalism, for instance, criticizing the Voting Rights Act as overly intrusive. Proponents of federalism often say that states are laboratories of democracy, and by reforming their forfeiture laws, many states have embarked on an experiment to provide greater protection for property rights. The federal government accomplishes nothing by cutting off those experiments at the knees. Now, as I was reading that story to you, John Locke was rolling in his grave because this policy is the antithesis of the classic liberal philosophy that most so-called small government conservatives claim to adhere to. So for most classical liberals, agreeing to submit to the authority of a government is only acceptable insofar as that government provides you protection for your property. But with civil asset forfeiture, your property is being arbitrarily taken from you. I mean, this is an inherently tyrannical policy that conservatives should never back. And again, it's ironic because Jeff Sessions is a so-called federalist. He is supposed to allow, or this is what he believes, you allow the states to do what they want, their laboratories, and you let them experiment and do the policies that they want. But he's saying, you know what? As the Attorney General, you're no longer allowed. We are going to allow cops to take your property from you arbitrarily, and then you have to prove your innocence when the American justice system was practically founded on the idea that you are innocent until proven guilty. I mean, I don't know how to describe this as anything other than tyrannical. It's just tyrannical, and I don't want to be redundant in using that word, but it's tyrannical, and we've got to say it again. This is a conservative, a small government conservative, saying we should allow state actors, police officers in these states, to have the autonomy to steal property from people. It's just It's completely absurd to me. And to me now, I'm wondering if all of these small government conservatives in the Republican Party will be principled and speak out against what Jeff Sessions is doing. I mean, certainly I expect Ron Paul and Rand Paul to speak out, but I mean, will most Republicans denounce what Jeff Sessions is doing? I mean, they claim that they are in favor of small government, but I can't think of a bigger government than one that literally steals property from citizens. I mean, that violates the social contract that classic liberals purport that they believe in. I mean, it's completely absurd to me. Civil asset forfeiture is one of those things where I can't understand how anyone is in favor of it. How anyone is. I mean, this is a bipartisan issue. I think conservatives and progressives alike should all equally hate this issue, because there's no reason for state actors to take the property of people that haven't been proven to be guilty. It makes no sense to me. So with Jeff Sessions doing this, he proves yet again how out of touch he is and how he has no principles. He claims to be a small government conservative, but really that position is going to change depending on a particular policy that he likes. So obviously, if you are a conservative and you are worried about an overreach of government power, this is it right here. Speak out against this, because civil asset forfeiture it's just a form of tyranny that is completely arbitrary.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.